Hey dears, my name is Julia. My story's a lesson for everyone who has health problems, because bad things happen to our family, and you must know what to do. My family's quite small. Mom and Dad, Grandma, my younger sister, and me. We have a very small age gap, only a year and a half, so we're good friends. But the thing is, my sister's been thought to be autistic for 12 years, so she'd been getting a special allowance. Of course, I don't remember my childhood. My grandma told me about it. When Stacy was born, everyone was happy, though a bit afraid I'd be jealous. But I got that a small creature in the crib was also a part of my family. I tried to talk to her. I shared my toys and everything. At first, everything was okay. We ate and grew up together. We smiled at each other and played. But Stacy never cried. I could cry like a wolf, but she couldn't. In 6 months, my parents took her to the doctor, and he said Stacy was just mute. She never talked. There was something wrong with her brain. A disabled person in the family is always a tragedy, but muteness seems not so horrible. My parents started learning sign language. Me too. Stacy learned to communicate with the world step by step. When she was 3, she started falling behind in her personal development. I was almost 5, so I was more or less smart, but I didn't get why Mom was crying and why Grandma was carrying Stacy in and out all the time. Stacy used to answer her questions using gestures. Now, she stopped doing this. She'd pretend there was nobody around her. If someone asked her, she just turned away. She'd been keen on painting. She sat with coloring books all the time. My parents took her to the doctor again. He said a horrible thing. Stacy was autistic. Autism isn't dumbness. It's much worse. Anyway, a person doesn't communicate and learn. An eternal kid that is impossible to get through to. Officially, Stacy was disabled. My parents were offered to put her in a boarding school. Dad even fought with a guy from social services. We weren't going to put our sister in there. Grandma moved to our house. My parents worked almost all the time. Stacy needed treatment. It cost a pretty penny, and Grandma looked after us. But, of course, I was little, and I couldn't understand. But even then, I'd say my sister was okay. Yes, she loved painting, and she didn't talk to other people and kids. They laughed at her. I didn't talk to them either. It was wormwood to me, but she was talking to me. In sign language, of course, and I played with her quite well. She listened to me. Then Grandma noticed it. In her spare time, she read about autism. She saw something was wrong with that. Stacy communicated with us. She understood everything. She reacted like any 3-year-old kid. She didn't talk, and she was a little naughty. The adults really scared her, but it wasn't for her. It was for the adults. They thought they had to sympathize with her or say something bad. Grandma played all kinds of educational games with her. Stacy was even better than me, but when Grandma tried to show our parents, Stacy refused. To be exact, she was just frightened. Well, you'd be scared too, if some nasty faces were over you. Anyway, my parents were afraid to hope for the better, but you couldn't explain it to a kid. For the same reason, we couldn't prove anything to the doctors. Nobody would believe an old woman and a kid. But Grandma persisted. She took Stacy to doctors. She made her pass lots of tests, but they all showed the same thing. Stacy was autistic, full stop. So Grandma gave up, though she never stopped teaching her. And when I went to school, I also started teaching her, like any other kid can. Stacy memorized everything. The thing was, she had a talent for languages. She read my English textbooks. Then she translated them. Even a translator did much worse. In 6th grade, Stacy could read in English and Spanish. I borrowed some books from the school library for her. And once, she told me she wanted to become a translator. A mute autistic girl. Grandma then started trying to find new doctors. Stacy was given the wrong diagnosis. It wasn't autism. It was for Stacy. She was afraid to talk to people. No surprise. She didn't see anything good in adults or kids. She communicated to her parents, yeah, but she was afraid Mom would be disappointed. It turned out she had a good memory. She remembered about the boarding school at 3 years old. At 6, I can't recall that myself. And despite the fear, she was afraid of the school. So she tried to be good. But the harder you try, the more you fail. I know it from my own experience. When you're afraid of tests, you'll flunk them. And if you don't even bother, you'll be okay. Well, Mom started to notice Stacy was okay, so she tried to have a chat with her. But Stacy was always stuck. She started to panic. Dad continued to believe in modern medicine, but I can understand him. He was only at home in the evenings. Then he went to bed. Though he had a well-paid job, it required his constant presence at the office, and he couldn't change jobs. We needed the money. In the end, Grandma agreed with some professor who studied the human brain. For Stacy, it was like a war. I persuaded her not to be afraid, and I promised to be with her. Stacy seemed to calm down. And we promised not to leave the room. The professor talked to Stacy, but because she was worried, she didn't talk distinctly. Then, Stacy was taken for an examination. The professor started to study her medical record. We hoped for a miracle. I was afraid it wouldn't work. Stacy'd given up then. That'd be the end. The professor was reading the nurse's notes for a long time, and then he shocked us. He said Stacy wasn't autistic. She had something much worse, cytomegalovirus. It destroys human nerve cells. To be exact, the virus ate the part of the brain responsible for speech when Stacy was a baby. That's why she doesn't talk. The virus is a terrible thing. Many of its symptoms coincide with others. There's simply no vaccinations against it. You can catch it at any age. And then, it starts to either eat you or it will pupate, and you'll be just a transmitter. It accumulated in Stacy very quickly, but stopped at some point, which is really lucky. Most likely, without treatment, she wouldn't have lived until 20. So she'd be like a mummy then. Anyway, the disease hasn't been studied much. That's why it's dangerous. The virus is sure to feed on the brain's neurons. It's transmitted like herpes. So, Stacy got it from Mom during her pregnancy. Of course, the whole family was examined for this virus. It turned out to live within us for a long time. But only Stacy got it. The others weren't influenced by the virus. The thing is, the professor said Mom caught it in the hospital where Stacy was born. The hospital is a perfect place to catch a rare disease. From Staphylococcus to this virus. And there's no way to save the hospital from the virus. Fortunately, there's a cure. The drug is very expensive, from abroad, and the treatment would be done in courses for several years. Of course, we ordered it and started to treat her. You know, the story is worth ending with a miracle. But no, as for miracles, reality's not something instant. Stacy's been treated for a year. The professor himself and the other people taught her to talk and develop her brain, to form new neurons, or something like that. I'm not good at medicine. As a result, Stacy started talking. Of course, it's not perfect speech, but she's only learning to speak with her mouth. Sometimes she passes over to sign language, but it's a big process. Of course, it's very difficult for her. New people to get used to, constant classes, painful injections. But she's trying really hard. And it's not that damn diagnosis, autism. She's now struggling to catch up with her peers. Of course, she's unlikely to finish school like the other kids. But still, we have the internet and online education. Stacy's now only 15, and she has a real chance to fulfill her dream and become a translator, and to translate more than just books. As for us, we're doing the best we can for her to succeed. And she's mastered the laptop and is now studying French. They sent her some tasks. That's my autistic sister, who turned out to be smarter than us. Now, I worry about other stuff. Stacy says that she's very lucky with her relatives. We didn't give up. We looked for new options to cure her. Well, we have the money. The treatment cost a pretty penny, about $5,000 per month, and that's just for the injections. How many kids like that are out there? How many of them get some diagnosis like autism and are waved off? Frankly speaking, it's scary. So guys, never give up. Share this video. Let as many people as possible know about cytomegalovirus. Like us, it'd always be nice of you. And don't neglect your health. You won't have another body to live in.